guys, and welcome back to another Lost Bits video right here on TetraBitGaming, the series where we explore the scrapped, unused, and unseen content in video games. So it's been a hot minute since my last real Pokemon series Lost Bits video, but I'm finally happy to get back into making another. Thankfully, just like the first gen, Pokemon Gold, Silver, and Crystal all have some content that was either altered or unused from the final releases. In addition to adding 100 new Pokemon, the second generation games brought many improvements to the series, such as Pokemon being able to hold items, shiny Pokemon, and my favorite, being able to actually see the EXP bar in a battle. Also, I won't be tackling this video alone, as I have the king of the Kanto Kids himself, the one and only Vinny of Original151.
What up, pimps? I hope you're ready to crush some unused Gen 2 content. So without further ado, let's get started.
So what better way to start this video than by taking a look at the 1997 Space World demos of Pokemon Gold and Silver. For those who have no idea what this is, let me give you a quick rundown. Basically, Nintendo Space World was a video game trade show hosted by Nintendo up until 2001. In 1997, Pokemon developers Game Freak were showing off an early version of the second generation of games. This beta version that they were showing off was never seen again until more than 20 years later, when in May of 2018, an anonymous user dumped a ROM of the demo online for the rest of the world to enjoy. Since this demo was from 2 years prior to the game releasing, even in Japan, it contained many differences from the final release. Most notably, there were several early and unused Pokemon designs. I already made some videos covering these altered and unused designs, so if you would like to see them, you can do so by clicking on the card right here.
Anyways, for this video, let's talk about some more altered and unused things that can be found in this demo. Based on the demo data, apparently at this point in development, the Elite Four trainers consisted of Bruno, Lorelei, Misty, and Giovanni, instead of Bruno, Koga, Karen, and Will, like we see in the final release. Since they are all characters from Gen 1, it's very likely they were just placeholders until some new characters were created, but I guess they were only able to come up with 2 new ones.
Next up are several demo sprites which were either unused or altered. These include the swimming animation from Gen 1, which was replaced with Lapras, a chubby little Snorlax, Aerodactyl, a walking overworld Poliwhirl, say that 5 times fast, a walking NPC, a biker, a delinquent, an elderly priestess, and a generic girl NPC. There's also an alternate dark-haired nurse, a different design for the gym leaders Jasmine and Faulkner, an Agatha sprite that goes unused in the final release, an early version of Bugsy, and this guy, who is believed to be a scrapped gym leader who would have been known as Gamma or Gamma. Additionally, in the demo of the games, you can encounter Giovanni in the radio tower. Team Rocket does take over this radio tower in the final release, but for whatever reason, Giovanni's appearance there was scrapped. In a similar vein, in the demo, the player can also find a Professor Oak imposter. This was likely a scrapped plot point in the game's story. Interestingly, around this same time, several imposter Professor Oak cards were released in the Pokemon TCG, suggesting that the character may have been planned to have a larger role in the series overall.
So it appears that initially, Pokemon Gold and Silver gave the player the new option of riding a skateboard.
Some pre-release magazine articles suggest that this was planned to replace the bicycle from Gen 1, and could be used to grant the player access to new areas that would have been otherwise unreachable.
It's likely that this idea was later reused with the Acrobike in Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald. There are actually still remnants of the skateboard in the final release, which can be accessed with cheat codes. However, at this point, all that it does is make the player move in one direction until colliding with another object, just like sliding on ice.
Next up are several Pokemon minigames that can be played in the Space World demo, but unfortunately most of them go unused in the final release. The minigames include Straight Up Poker, a sliding puzzle game, Shinkei, a memory game that is actually in the data for the final releases of the game but still goes unused, a Picross game, and a minigame which has Pikachu running and collecting musical notes. Besides poker, which was likely just removed to avoid controversy, the other games, although basic, are all complete, so I wonder why it was decided that they should all be axed. Next is an unused text string in the demo for a Pokemon using the move Mow. This isn't a move seen in any Pokemon game, as far as I know, but just based on the word, it may have been an HM move to mow down tall grass or something.
And lastly, for the Space World demo, is the layout of the game setting. So as you may know, the various regions in the Pokemon games are based on real-world locations, such as various parts of Japan, France, and Hawaii. Well, by accessing the town map in the demo, it appears that the game was planned to take place in the area inspired by the entire country of Japan.
The final cut of the Gen 2 games takes place in the Johto region, which is based on the real-life Kansai region. The regions are both located just west of the Kanto region in the game and in real life. Go figure. Initially, likely due to hardware limitations, the entirety of the Kanto region that we see in Gen 1 was condensed to just a single area. As some of you may know, this was changed in the final game where we got to explore almost the entirety of Kanto as we originally saw it in Pokemon Red, Blue, and Yellow, thanks to the late Satoru Iwata, who was able to help Game Freak with compressing the game's data. Anyways, the various locations in the beta also correspond to several Japanese areas like Kyoto, Osaka, Tokyo, Mount Fuji, and Hokkaido, to name a few. And although initially believed to have been based on an area near Nagasaki where one of the atomic bombs was dropped to put an end to the Pacific theater of the Second World War, the ruins of Alph area in the demo where the unknown Pokemon reside more so probably corresponds to real-life Izumo, a province in Japan that is known for its ancient tombs and temples. So the unknowns here either originate from a nuclear strike or real-life ancient tombs. Take your pick.
Now it's time to move on to the final releases of Pokemon Silver, Gold, and Crystal. First is a really cool feature that was used in the Japanese release of the games, but never used in the international releases. I'm of course talking about the mobile system Game Boy adapter, which would let Japanese players connect their Game Boy to the internet via their mobile phones.
This might not seem that amazing today, but this was 2001. A time where for non-PC players, your means to play video games with others was limited to as long as your link cable could reach. Anyways, with the use of the mobile adapter GB and paying some microtransaction fees, players could head on over to the Pokécom Center in Goldenrod City, and both trade with and battle against players across Japan. Players could also download some DLC, such as exclusive minigames, items like the GS Ball, which gave the player a chance to catch a Celebi, as well as Pokemon newsletters. The service didn't last too long, likely due to its extra cost, and it was shut down in late 2002. Unfortunately, like the rest of the Pokemon games for the Game Boy and Game Boy Color, the save data for Pokemon Crystal is stored in the game's RAM, which needs to be powered by the cartridge's battery. So the number of potential carts that still have any original DLC from the mobile adapter is shrinking every day, until eventually the content is really lost forever, that is, unless someone manages to archive it first. The final releases of Pokemon Gold and Silver also contain a few unused sprites. The first of these sprites is just the early player sprite as seen in the Space World demo, and the other is of some unused Old Man NPC. There is no walking sprite for this character, meaning that he was intended to be stationary like a gym leader. On that note, both gym leaders Price and Chuck fit the description of an old stationary dude, so maybe this was some early version sprite for either of them. Lastly, there is an unseen Bulbasaur slot machine symbol that was planned to be seen in the game's casino. With some codes, the game can be tricked into giving the player a 3 Bulbasaur payout. I guess Bulbasaur was scrapped in favor of some cherries, which little did we know, I guess, was actually Cherubi all along. Moving on, we have some unused probabilities of Pokemon fleeing. As you may know, in the Gen 2 games, they expanded on the mechanic of Pokemon fleeing and included a handful of Pokemon that have a chance of escaping. These Pokemon are divided into 3 probabilities of fleeing: 10% chance per turn, 50%, or 100% as seen with the legendary beasts. Oddly enough, some of these odds of escaping are never used because these Pokemon are never encountered in the wild. These Pokemon include Eevee, Porygon, Umbreon, and Togetic, which would all have a 10% chance of escaping per turn, and Articuno, Zapdos, and Moltres would all have a 50% chance. Wait, Articuno, Zapdos, and Moltres? None of the Gen 1 legendary birds are ever encountered in Gold, Silver, or Crystal, but based on this information, it is likely that at one point the legendary birds and the rest of the aforementioned Pokemon were indeed intended to be battled in a wild encounter. Pokemon Gold and Silver also have an unused function that would let you name your character's mother. This was likely scrapped due to the overall minor role the player's mother plays throughout the game. This naming feature is still present in the Space World demo, which allows you to choose the mother's name to be Mother, Mom, Mama, or a custom name.
The second generation of Pokemon games also introduced shiny Pokemon, which are a very rare alternate color variation of each Pokemon. There are, however, some shiny variants that are normally unobtainable in these games. The first unobtainable shiny Pokemon is Mew. However, each legitimately distributed Mew had individual values, or IVs, which didn't allow for Mew to be shiny when traded up to the next gen. The sprites for shiny Mew are still, however, present in the game in both a gold and silver variation. Furthermore, although all 26 forms of the unknown Pokemon do have shiny variants, very ironically, only the I and V unknowns are legitimately obtainable due to their IV values. That's kinda wild.
The Gen 2 games also have two unused field moves. The first of these is the move Payday, which normally just increases how much money you receive after winning a battle. It's currently unknown as to what Payday would do as a field move, but since Payday is clearly related to money, my best guess would be to either just earn some coin, or to pay an NPC to step aside or fork over an item or something. The Payday strain can still be called in the game, but attempting to use the field move will result in the game crashing. The other unused field move lacks a proper name, and only an error strain can be recovered. That is, unless Error is the name of the scrapped move. Either way, there's currently no way of telling what this move may have been for. My best guess is that maybe it's the move Mo that was also scrapped from the Space World demo. I guess we may never know. Attempting to load and use this move in the final game won't result in a crash like with Payday, but a whole lot of nothing happens instead.
After beating the main game, you can visit the trainer house in Viridian City to battle against the last person you used the mystery gift feature with, once per day. Or if you haven't used mystery gift yet, the battle will default to a Pokemon trainer named Cal. Cal battles with the final evolutions of all three Johto starter Pokemon, Feraligatr, Typhlosion, and Meganium, all at level 50. It turns out that Cal also had two more rosters which go completely unused. One with all three Johto starters at level 10, and then the other with the Stage 1 evolutions all at level 30. This suggests that maybe Cal was intended to appear in other areas along the way for the player to fight on their journey, much like with the player's rival.
Left over in Pokemon Crystal is a Super Game Boy border that is programmed into the game but is never used. This is because Pokemon Crystal was only compatible with Game Boy Color systems, so it wouldn't even work on original Game Boy units or the Super Game Boy for the Super Nintendo. Even though this border is found in Pokemon Crystal, it still says Gold version as it's still left over from that game. Pokemon Crystal also has a few audio files that go unused. First up is a cry for an unknown Pokemon. This cry is a leftover from Pokemon Red and Blue, where it too is also unused. Next is an unused version of the Game Freak intro sound. It too is a leftover from the previous generation. And lastly is a victory theme that goes normally unused. I say normally because apparently this theme will play after defeating a certain trainer that can be found by glitching the game. Now, I always love when a game still has some debugging features left over, and thankfully all three games in the second generation also have a hidden debugging menu with a variety of functions. In Pokemon Crystal, a battle debug mode can be accessed. This mode allows you to form a party of any 6 known Pokemon at the time with any level you desire, and then pit them against almost any trainer or Pokemon in the game. This is an awesome feature to rebattle any trainer, try out every Pokemon quickly, or simply to just mess around with.
Pokemon Crystal's debug mode also has a sound test menu. Just like every sound test, this of course just lets you scroll through and listen to the game's music tracks.
In each Gen 2 game, a sprite color editor and move checker can be accessed via the debug menu as well. These are all pretty self-explanatory. The Pokemon and trainer color editors let you play around with the red, blue, and green color values to change the colors of the Pokemon and trainers respectively. Red Totodile and Poop Grimer. You got it! And to cap off this video, let's now have a look at some of the game's unused, altered, and normally inaccessible areas. The first unused area is a major one. Although Kanto's Safari Zone doesn't make an appearance in these games, there are remnants of it that strongly suggest that it was planned to return. Normally, what was once the entrance in Gen 1 is now just a wall in these games, but with some ROM hacking, the entrance can be loaded back in. These doors lead to an empty entrance room where the player would normally be charged an entrance fee to the Safari Zone. Moving forward leads us to a somewhat small and very basic looking Safari Zone. Oh yeah, there aren't any exits here, so once you're inside, you better get comfy cause you're in here for good. Just like it does in Gen 1, the Safari Zone here also plays the evolution theme on loop, for better or for worse. After walking around for a bit, you'll soon realize that no Pokemon can be encountered in the tall grass. That being said, several Pokemon like Kingler and Staryu can be encountered by fishing in the small pond. Judging on how basic this Safari Zone is, it's probably pretty safe to assume it was decided to have it scrapped from the game pretty early in development. Furthermore, there are also these things, which are apparently supposed to be fountains that are unseen elsewhere in the game. It's a pretty strange coincidence that they'd be here of all places. Next up is a small regular house with an NPC lady as well as a Rhydon. I mean Clefairy. Wait, Rhydon? Yeah, for some reason this particular Rhydon was mistakenly assigned the 2-frame animation that is used in the party menu instead of the 4-frame animation that is normally seen in the overworld. This apparently causes the animation to default to Clefairy sometimes instead. Apparently this house was planned to be located in Olivine City. We know this because instead of removing the building completely, the developers still left the warp tile to enter the building far outside the city in an inaccessible area. Since this warp tile is found on the same tile as a tree, it's still not accessible even if you enable the walk through walls cheat. That being said, its functionality can still be triggered with some more ROM hacking. The woman here mentions that when her Pokemon got sick, the pharmacist in Ecruteak City made her some medicine. Interestingly though, there is no pharmacy in Ecruteak as it's actually located in Cyanwood in the final cut of the game. This means that the pharmacy was either planned to be or was already in Ecruteak at some point earlier in development, and also that this building was for whatever reason decided to be scrapped around that same time.
And speaking of changes made, it should come as no surprise that pretty much all of the towns in these games underwent some changes throughout their development. These changes were mostly just moving around the general layout of the terrain and buildings as seen in these comparisons. One of the most notable changes, however, was to the Lake of Rage. As you can see here, initially, the Lake of Rage was planned to have an adjacent city complete with a Pokemon Center, mart, and even a gym. The ability to fly to the Lake of Rage in the final release may be a leftover from when it still had a city, since it's the only destination the player can fly to, where the player won't land in front of a building.
Unless you've played around with the walk-through walls cheat yourself, chances are you probably haven't seen the entirety of this small area in the bottom left side of Violet City, since most of it is hidden just out of view. After walking through the trees, we soon find out that both the signs are non-functional, as is the door to this building. So, what's the point of these, you might be wondering? Well, those with a keen eye will realize that this section is actually identical to the top right area of the Ruins of Alph entrance. At one point, this section was probably meant to be actually visible to the player and serve as an illusion to show how close Violet City is to the ruins of Alph. For whatever reason though, instead of just taking it out completely, the developers chose instead to just hide it from plain view. Apparently even less complete, there's also remnants of some house just located outside of Celadon City. It still has a door, but just like the one outside of Violet City, it too just kicks you out. And man, the walkthrough walls cheat can lead to some really weird stuff, since it messes with how the game loads things. Like it made this tree look like a slowpoke, and then soon after it started a battle with whatever this is. Let's just call it the Missing No of Gen 2, or Billy for short. And if you thought the battle went smoothly, then no, it didn't.
Although much of Kanto was brought back in Gen 2, there are of course some areas that weren't, such as the Pewter City Museum of Science and the Cinnabar Island Pokemon Lab, which was apparently destroyed due to a volcano eruption on the island. Well, turns out there is actually interior map data for these areas left unused in the game.
The Pokemon Lab also looks slightly altered compared to Gen 1, suggesting that it may have been scrapped later in the game's development. Normally I'd suggest that these were likely removed due to storage limitations, but I mean, they're still in the game, so maybe it was more so cut due to development time constraints instead. Next we have several other areas that are also left unused. These include some layouts for some houses, an office, early layouts for the Rocket Hideout, early versions of Sprout Tower floors 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9, a pretty basic dungeon layout from an unknown location, an unused puzzle room from the ruins of Alph, and some unused cave layouts. Now I don't know if it was just the power of suggestion, but the layout for this cave appears to look like some letters. To me it looks like a C, W, S, H, and R. Or maybe I'm crazy.
Alright my dudes, the last notable unused area is some sort of forest maze that leads to a Pokemon Center and a cave entrance. It is believed that this may have been an early version of the Elix Forest, with the cave entrance at the top being the entrance to what would eventually be Mount Silver.
And that concludes this Lost Bits video on the second generation of Pokemon games, and I hope you all enjoyed it. As always, if you did or learned something new, be sure to slap a like down below, and also let me know what your favorite Lost Bit was. Also, huge thanks to Vinny for helping out with this video. Guys, if you haven't already, be sure to check him out over at his channel, Original151, by clicking on the card right here. He streams and uploads amazing Pokemon and other Nintendo content that I'm sure you'll enjoy. And if you would like to stay even more up to date with me and this channel, be sure to subscribe here, as well as swing by my other social media things and Discord server, which are all linked in the description below. But as always, thank you all so much for watching today, and until next time, I will see you in a bit.